I'm John Travis here in Mullumbimby, New South Wales on, I forgot to check the date again, the 16th of March 2020, where it is the Ides of March in Ashland, Oregon, with Zoe Alowan and Bill Kauth, my good buddies from quite some time ago. I am going to find out who you are and why, and we already know something about your work. It'll be linked on the in the narrative. But let's start with you, Zoe. Like, where were you born? What kind of siblings, birth order? Did you play?
Whoa, that's big.
Okay.
Going back to the roots here.
Back to the streets. Okay, I was born in Ohio, and
really? Me too. Where?
I was of all things. I was born in Kent, or near Kent,
Yes.
and
Yep.
my dad was a professor at Kent State University, and I went to school in Oberlin College, and then left the Midwest after college and headed for California.
When did you graduate from Oberlin? I was at Worcester nearby.
Yeah, I went down to Worcester to visit some friends. I graduated in 1973.
Okay, I was long gone then. I was out at 35.
Yeah.
You're
yes,
young.
But so yeah, I was very focused on education and art. I was an art and education and psychology major. That's when you could write your own majors, and minored in dance. So I had a really dynamic college education, especially in the years that I was going to college. I got educated by my peers as well as by some wonderful professors. But I took off for California because I wanted to build community, and I wanted to live. I wanted to live.
Just your laptop is cutting off the side of your face. I'm going to get you fully. There we go.
Okay.
And let's go back actually to your childhood, like siblings. What your earliest?
Okay, I have an older sister who was 2.5 years older, and very influential in my life. Quite brilliant. She went to Antioch College, but we lived surrounded by two woods. There was the big woods, and there was the little woods right behind our house. And my parents loved creating, playing with their kids in terms of creating clubs and things like that, because their friends were primarily older people and their kids. Even though we had a 2-acre parcel and we farmed our food, organic food. My dad was way into organic food way before anybody else was. And we spent our summers alternating between harvesting the food and preserving it, shelling peas, all those things, and putting up the food, and then playing with a club that we had called the Buttercup Club, and we had dues and initiations through the raspberry patch, and a lot of time in the woods. Yeah, it was very spiky and fun. So I had a kind of a very interesting kind of Ozzie and Harriet combined with, Abraham Lincoln kind of childhood. And my mother was like Betty Crocker, and a Girl Scout leader, and just, she had a pretty wild sense of humor too. So
you had a sense of community in Kent, kids in the neighborhood, or?
We did have kids in the neighborhood, and we would just go out, especially because we had a big parcel of land that was kind of landlocked, perfect for our little organic farm. But we studied culture because my father was a philosophy professor. So every dinner time was kind of an educational experience. And
then did you experience much community at I was going to say Antioch.
Well, I did.
Oberlin.
My sister, yes, I experienced a tremendous amount of community because, after all, it was 1969 when I went to school, and there was a lot of community with people who I'm still connected with, and such fascinating and interesting people from all over the U.S. That was finally you find kindred spirits, you know, people who really are similar to you in values and interest. And I was a theater major until I decided, okay, this is just too absurd, playing Moliere. I changed my major to what I'd been passionate about all throughout my childhood, which was art. And so I returned to the painting studio, but also studied education and psychology and was very involved in creating community with the neighborhood of Oberlin with all these children's programs. And I taught art and children's programs for well into my, I guess into my 50s. I was always involved in art and education.
And so you after graduated, you wanted to find more community, and that's where you thought California would be the.
So I stopped on the way to visit my sister, who was, after Antioch, found herself in New Buffalo Commune, which is one of the first communes that took place in the 60s, 1964, 65, 67. So that was quite an experience to spend some time in New Buffalo near Taos with my sister on her commune.
Oh,
and,
so it was in Arizona, or New Mexico, not
New Mexico.
Buffalo, New York.
No, New Mexico.
Yeah,
New Buffalo was a pretty famous commune, one of the first communes in that area. But I thought that was just a little too wild. I wanted something a little different. Eventually, we found our way to Humboldt County. This is my my boyfriend at the time, who later became the father and my husband and first husband. And we settled in near Whitethorn in the area called Whale Gulch, where there had been all these people from San Francisco who had moved up there from the Mime Theater and had bought land in that area. And that was quite an interesting initiation into community. Some were fishermen, some were artisans, and we lived there until we just got too poor to live there anymore, and we had to go back to the city.
It was expensive living out in the country, or you didn't have much income?
I think our rent was $60 a month, and that was hard to come up with.
Probably not a lot of employment out there.
Not a lot of employment, and I was making jewelry at the time and selling it, but it was, I hadn't become very proficient at it at that time. But I certainly valued those experiences of being in community in that Whale Gulch area. So interesting. Some people had been living there quite some time, and they all lived on this road, either on the yellow dirt road or they lived up in a meadow. And it was a beautiful place to live. I learned a lot about really connecting with nature and a variety of interesting people.
Now, this is Humboldt County, about 200 miles north of San Francisco on the coast, right?
That's right. And kind of a little cove, kind of a hidden cove called Below Shelter Cove. Yeah, which is still a thriving place of sorts.
There's an area called the Lost Coast up there. Is that just north of that?
Yeah, that's kind of it's part of the Lost Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I want to bring it up to when you met Bill, and then we'll switch over and get Bill's story, and then we'll.
Yeah. Well,
so, married, you got kids.
Married and have two wonderful kids.
Yeah.
And I had been a part of a spiritual community of artists for 14 years, living together, creating art together, and I wanted to leave that at some point. Somebody told me, you know what, you've got to leave that community because you're going to be creating a community of your own. And I kind of listened to them. It made sense. And after that, I went to Bali to study dance, Balinese dance. And then I came back, and this whole community of people did this deep work. Gordon Clay was the instigator of it. And we did this work called Healing the Father Wound, Healing the Mother Wound. And after you did that, you could do a 7-day intensive with other men and women who had done those previous trainings. And out of that, one of these brothers, I now had a brother for the first time that I totally trusted because of the level of intimacy and agreements we had there. And so he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going to Burning Man. And you love art. The art there is amazing. And I think would you come with me?" And I had no idea what I was getting in for, but I went along, and we're coming close to this festival, and and I've been pretty cloistered for a long time, just with all these artists and this work I was involved in. And he says, "How many people do you think you're going to be there?" And I go, "Oh, a couple of hundred." And he goes, "Oh no." Like 40,000 or something. So out of that 40,000, Gordon Clay, who was the facilitator of the camp Deep Heaven that I was part of, said, "I'd like to introduce you to somebody." And it was this guy right here, Bill Kauth.
Right there at Burning Man.
And he came back a second time, and that was right after the burn, and it was very late at night, and we ended up spending hours all night serving people on the playa s'mores and beer, graham crackers, marshmallows over the burn barrel. All these people would stagger by, and we just kept feeding them. And it's kind of a metaphor for what we've done. We really feed community.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a gap here between having kids and this artist community. Can we go back and fill in or not?
No, it's okay. I mean, I think that that was another part of struggle of my first husband and I. Really were interested in community. We were interested in kind of a spiritual community and the ideas of Sufism and Gurdjieff, and so we found a community that was also full of arts and theater and different activities, and there was lots of going and comings. I went to India because I was also studying classical Indian dance that I started learning from Masa Snyder, Gary Snyder's wife at the time. And I used to work for
in San Francisco?
No, this is in Grass Valley, California.
Oh, Grass Valley. Okay, that's where you went.
Sierra Foothills.
Humboldt. Okay.
Yeah, eventually. I went to Boulder for a while too. So I've been around and back and forth. Unfortunately, I moved my children too many times. But anyway.
Well, an aside here, because it's actually how Bill and I most connected was my earliest awareness of why I split up with my first wife after we had my daughter, and this whole phenomenon we're now calling postpartum relationship abandonment syndrome, of why having children destroys most relationships in a nuclear family, because there just ain't enough to go around. So did you experience any of that with your kids and your husband?
Well, I think there was, yes, I did. But I don't know if it was because of the feeling of being siloed in relationship, where just, or maybe it was, but I think we got together so young when we were 18. And then when we were 24, I was pregnant with our first child. And it was overwhelming for him, the idea of being tied down, because he really hadn't experienced that much life separate from being with me. And I think he was afraid of being a replica of his own father, and that terrified him. So he left. So he left 2 times. He left both the first time after I had my daughter, and then we got back together, and then he left again after our son was born, when he was a year. And it was a combination of things, but I think there was also some parts there where we kept opting for being in a rural environment rather than in a place where we could really make money. And even though he was an attorney, he fresh out of law school, he wasn't really able to make ends meet in the rural area that we were living in. And I think there was some shame in that. And he just felt, I think I didn't recognize how much I had been responsible for moving into that particular area. So anyway, regardless, he left a second time. And I was pretty much a single mom.
for most of their children's upbringing then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, that brings us up to the meeting at Burning Man. So let's jump over to Bill and where you were born and siblings and early childhood interests in community and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I was born in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Grew up in a little town, about 3,000 people outside of Milwaukee. Had one sister, and man, it was just idyllic. It was where, you knew where all the kids were by where their bikes were parked. Seriously, and my folks kind of knew everybody, and literally the baker and the butcher, I knew their kids, and the dime store kid and the bank kid and the car dealer kid and the bowling alley kid. I knew all those kids. They were all, just all lived within a block. It was just idyllic, and then as our culture post World War II got richer, like everybody else, my folks went to Florida and just they left it all behind, which is part of my passion. I knew it was possible, but that's part of my passion now, devoting my life to building community, building tribe.
Did they go to Florida when you were a kid, or
No, I was way after college. My sister got killed in a car accident when I was in college. She was still in high school, so I have no sibs.
And I think that was partly why they moved to Florida.
It kind of broke their heart. It really destroyed them, losing a child like that. Yeah, it's really, really
Did you
hard.
notice that advent of television had a big impact on your? I grew up in a small town too, at 2,500.
Yeah.
It radically changed in the early 50s with TV. Everyone had TV and stayed home.
Yeah. That actually, there wasn't a significant impact for me. It just wasn't. I don't know why.
Maybe you didn't watch that much television.
Yeah. Then.
Well, I'm thinking of the whole community, like, the social capital deteriorated rapidly with the.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've read, Putnam's book called Bowling Alone, which goes back about 30 years and talks about all of those factors that have literally, utterly destroyed community in our culture. So
then you went off.
One of them.
You went off to college. How was high school for you? What was that like?
It was great. I loved high school. I'm a kind of a social guy. So as I grew and matured, I became, like, enjoyed all the partying possibilities. I loved college because I enjoyed partying. I was so into fraternities. I just couldn't get enough of fraternities.
Really?
And, there's that propensity. There's that propensity for community. I was seeking. I was searching. And I changed colleges 3 times and changed majors about 6 times. It took me 6 years to get out of, 6 years to get out of undergraduate, which, and then I taught 5th grade for a couple of years, which took me to age 26 during that incredibly precarious time when we could have got drafted and sent right to Vietnam in a heartbeat. So I was a fairly creative draft dodger. And
what colleges did you sample?
Oh, I went to St. Norbert's initially, flunked out of there, and then went to one of those catch-all colleges that if you can pay the tuition, you get in. My dad got me into that. He's actually saved my life at that point. And then I made the dean's list there, and then I transferred to the University.
Where was that?
It was called Northland College. It was in Ashland, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Oh.
And then transferred down to Milwaukee to the University of Wisconsin there. And I got my degree from there, taught school. And then I became a salesman, actually. I was selling college textbooks and, got married and had a child and got sent to Omaha and came back and went to graduate school. And I love graduate school. And that's where I discovered personal growth stuff. There was a kind of an equivalent to Alowan in Milwaukee called Cambridge House. And they brought in some of the best Gestalt trainers from around the country.
Ah.
And boy, I just could not get enough of that. It was like I had found my passion in my life right there.
Sounds like that was pretty transformational for you
It was
time.
Totally. That was so transformational for me.
What year was that?
That was 72. And then I got a job in a social service agency building groups. And I built, another dozen men's groups and 3 dozen women's groups. And my favorite story is I put together a shy people's group and nobody showed up. It's a true story, honestly. I just experimented with everything. And
you tried to put together a shy person's group.
Yeah. And then I
you
mutated
need a shyman for that group.
Oh, very good. Oh, Jack. So I mutated into a psychotherapist, and I love being a psychotherapist. And it was at that time. Oh, I should tell this full story. I was a feminist therapist because that was the potent social energy, the power at that time was the women's movement. And I got invited to the biannual Wisconsin Feminist Therapists Association meeting. And on the second day, I'm standing in the lobby, and because I'd done so much Gestalt work, I had the eyes to be able to see fairly evolved people. And I looked around, I was the only guy out of 125 feminist therapists. I looked around and I saw these incredibly evolved, amazing beings. And something just came over me. And it was like, damn it, somebody's got to do something for the men.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So that was like a divine call. And I tried to push it away, but it was in. And from then on, I was an obsessed guy. I could not do anything and other than, proceed, get on with this task that I was, gifted with, I suppose. And then I found an old friend of mine named Ron Herring. We'd been together in Gestalt group for years, and really good friends. And he had a PhD in curriculum. He was teaching at the University of Wisconsin, one of the smaller units there. And then I had another new friend, a guy named Rich Tosi, who I had been in some of these emotional cathartic events with him. And I got to see his heart. I got to see his pain and his anger and his sadness and his joy. And I loved this guy. And so I just intuitively invited him. And both Ron and Rich, they said, "Boy, Bill, I don't know what you're talking about. What's this men's what. But we like your passion. We're in." And turns out,
now, Rich Tosi was an ex-Marine. Now
I was going to mention that. Yeah, he had spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. And so the three of us spent 1984, the latter part of 84, putting this training together, and we launched it in January of 85, exactly 35 years ago. And wow. And we knew right away it was fabulous because we saw the results from the men like immediately. And it grew and evolved organically. For 35 years now, we've had like way over 80,000 men come through the New Warrior training, of which you're one, of course. And
David Isaacs was one of your first ones.
Oh boy, yeah, he was.
He's a good man.
And it's spread all over the planet now. I think we're in, formally in about a dozen countries with, formal, certified training units, and another dozen countries as a startup. So, yeah, no, that's been an enormous part of my life. And at about 10 years, I was done, and they gave me the title Visionary at Large and sent me on my way with a little stipend. And so that's allowed me to create stuff. So I created the Inner King training and the Warrior Monk training, which I took around the world for about 10 years. I love that. And that's what I do is I'm a social inventor. So I create stuff and then I give it away to the next generation and move on to my new creation. Then in 2005, I go to Burning Man, and this fabulous being shows up in my life, and we discover that we've got this shared passion for community. So that's the new call that's been coming in, and we've made a lot of mistakes as we started to do it, which I find if you're a real entrepreneur, you got to risk and make mistakes, which we did, and wasted a lot of time and energy, but we finally put the pieces together. And now have a fabulous tribe that's been together for 7 years. There's 20 of us, half men, half women, half single, half couples. We meet every single week. We're totally committed to each other. We get together for a long weekend every year and re-up our commitment with each other with formal ceremony. And we're non-residential. That's a really important detail. We all have our own homes, and we still meet every single week. And in January, we had a focus on how's tribe been for you, and every single person said tribe is like the most important thing. It's like family. It's like incredibly precious to me. And I look back for 7 years. I've never been bored, and there's always a different leader every week. It's fabulous. So we're taking that out into the world now. We're doing it as an online course. For a while, we did it as face-to-face. We'd bring people into Ashland, teach them how to build tribe. But now we're taking it out around the world as an online, a 7-week online course.
That's been really interesting.
Boy, has it been hard, but it's worth it.
Well, I'm reminded that there's a new Brene Brown thing on Netflix where it puts together her TED Talks and the importance of trying and failing, and
Yeah.
how it shifted my like one of my groups here in Australia. I
Hmm.
had been to a meeting where I just was shut down, and I was bothered, and
Hmm.
I didn't want to say anything, and so I stewed on it. And then the next meeting, I went back right after I'd watched the Brene Brown thing, and I took some risks, and I stumbled through, but I managed to get a breakthrough, even though I was clumsy. And you know, my tendency is to forget about the inarguable truth of what I'm feeling and what I want, and jump right into
Yeah.
what you should do, which doesn't serve me very well. But I managed to stumble through and do that. But I want to go back to how you and I connected and around that particular topic, because
Yeah.
I had just done the New Warriors training. I was exploring the local I group in Sebastopol. I'd heard
Yeah.
about you through, I think it was Rod Newton, when I'd been up in Ashland,
Could be, yes.
and also Skip. And so I knew who you were, but you weren't there. And this legendary figure that everyone spoke about with such reverence. But so I finally meet you at this house in Sebastopol after an I group. And for some reason, I gave you a leftover copy of we'd just done this big summit for the Alliance for Transforming the Lives of Children. And in it was this very old piece I'd written on why men leave, it was calling it at that point, it turned later to why dads leave. Somehow or other, you picked that piece out and came back to me and said you wanted to publish it, I think, in the New Warriors Journal. And I said, well, let me work on it, because it was still pretty crude. But tell me how you happened to pick that out, and because you were basically the father of that whole project. I wouldn't have gone anywhere with it had you not encouraged me.
You know, I remember meeting you also, and just, you know, really resonating, and I kind of knew we'd be friends for a long time. And then when you showed me that manuscript, I looked at it and I went, this is seriously important original material. And I think I told you that, and it needs to get published.
Well, then I recall you said something about how it had connected with your personal experience with
your personal experience.
Your first wife. But I'm not remembering the details well enough. Do you?
Oh, well, yeah, you know, that was one of those situations where, you know, I got pregnant, and, you know, did the obligatory thing, and it was awful. So I left. So I have that, you know, I'm one of those fathers that left. So I guess I resonated it at that level too.
Yeah.
So appreciating your putting some healing stuff out there.
What you said was that it helped you resolve that, and that was the feedback we were getting early on from people, is that it helped them understand what had happened, because like, you know, and and I just completely forgot what I was going to say. It was a very important piece of that. Nope, it slipped out again. Well, good old memory shelves overstocked.
Yeah, nice way to put it.
Well, yeah, the other thing was you had just come from one of Gordon Clay's weekends at Harbin. I think you were still in the afterglow of that, and that was the first time I'd heard about that. So that was the connection that then led to your being introduced at Burning Man by Gordon. And I met Gordon, I think we were doing some kind of, I'd been part of a group based on radical honesty and Susan Campbell's what is the name of her book? Boy, I'm Susan Campbell, I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
And that had been a powerful group for us. And where one of the members was staying, Getting Real is the name of the book, and later Speaking What's Real, we were meeting at a house where one of our members was house sitting, and Gordon Clay came in, and I met him. And so that was another serendipitous connection. But it's become a central theme for me of this issue of, and now I finally remembered what it was I was blocking before. there are 4 of us involved in starting the wellness movement. Halbert Dunn, who was born in 1893 and whose book High Level Wellness inspired me in 1971. It was then 10 years old. I discovered that he had left his family when his 3 young boys, no one knew he was married. He had lived in Washington, D.C. He'd started the U.S. Department of Vital Statistics, and he ran that 25 years. Then he was writing these papers and publishing them in the Journal of Public Health on wellness, and no one had heard this word, even though it dates to 1650s. I discovered by tracking down that he had a family and 3 sons, and he had left them. So here was an example of this. I had left my daughter and first wife when she was 2.5, and 2 of the other founding members of the wellness movement had done the same thing. So it was like a rampant phenomenon of this conflict, I think, between our nesting desires to create a family and our passions and our work, and the lack of community that allowed us to do both, because the demands of 3.87 adults per infant to meet their needs, it's do the math, you know, a nuclear family doesn't work. So it's just amazing to me how this phenomenon, this tragedy of disconnection, is interwoven amongst those of us who are doing the work to try to rebuild the community that we lack. So little sermon there, and how you fit the pattern too.
Yes.
But now you've met at Burning Man. Let me hear your side of the Burning Man meet.
Oh, Bill's side?
Yeah.
Oh,
How did Gordon introduce Zoe? He said, you got to meet this chick.
Well, Burning Man is really free and open, as most everybody knows. And I remember they have a thing they call the Critical Tits Parade, in which there's like 10,000 women on bikes. And Zoe was part of that. And I remember she came back to the camp where we were, and I just remember seeing those. She's got really cute knees, really.
Oh my goodness.
So I complimented her, and you know, stuff happens, and I kind of fell in love immediately. It was really interesting, and I hadn't completed my previous relationship. I remember driving back and going, "Damn it! Ooh, I haven't done it," because I knew we were going to be probably together for a really long time, or the rest of our lives.
Yeah, that's right.
My story.
When I first met you in Ashland, or we started spending time together, you were in 1 or 2 other relationships that I sensed they weren't going to last. But meeting Zoe.
Yeah, there was a transitional one there.
And then the story with the helicopter and the mountain.
Oh boy, that's right. That's a kind of a cool story too. When I set it up with a buddy, and we were having it was a birthday party on a kind of a little ranchette out here, and this helicopter came in, and I invited Zoe to take a helicopter ride, and the pilot took us up to a bluff way up above the lake, and we got out, and I walked over a little ways and got down on my knee and held out the ring and asked her to marry me. And you know, she said yes, but you know, what could she do? There was, you know, miles of sagebrush and shit. And so we flew back. Everybody kind of knew that this was happening. So did she say yes? It was pretty romantic, huh?
It was very romantic, but when he asked me, I was just, first of all, because of my time living in Humboldt County, and when helicopters would come in looking for marijuana plants,
oh, right.
It was very traumatic for the whole community. So they did this ranchette, you know, and this helicopter is buzzing the house, and it just triggered me. I was pissed off. Get out of here, you know. I was so grumpy. I go in the house, I said, there's a helicopter buzzing this house. What's going on, you know? And then it landed, and this guy came out with 2 bouquets of flowers, one for me and one for the other woman whose birthday it was, my dear friend Soraya. And so, you know, it was like, whoa, everything's changing for me. Suddenly, I'm going from being angry about the helicopter, and now it's bouquet of flowers. And then we take this trip, you know, we're on our headphones or in the helicopter, and it looks like we're going right into a mountain. mean, there's steep mountains here. I'm going, oh my God, I'm not used to helicopters. I think that was one of my second helicopter ride. And I was just like, what's going on? We're going to crash. And then he lands and we walk out to this peak or this viewpoint, all of the valley below us. And I'm looking around and I go, oh my God, this looks like where really rich people would take their girlfriend to propose to them. And I turned back and Bill's on his knee. And I have this response sometimes where I just go into hysterics and I start laughing. So he said, will you marry me? And I just burst into laughter. Which wasn't the response he was looking for. So I sobered up and I said yes, because, you know, yeah.
You needed a ride back.
Yeah, I needed a ride back. Yeah. And I'm still on a pretty good ride.
Yeah, nice to put.
Yeah. We had an instant reception.
You've been such an inspiration. It took me a few more years. I was 68 before I found Yvonne, interestingly, at Harbin Hot Springs.
Yeah, you know that place.
But we'd both been to Burning Man, but at different years. And so we had a sense of what that was like. So this was, what year was the helicopter ride? About 2000?
2005. Oh, no, that one was 2007. And then we got married in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, working into your tribe and the formation of that, and then the book and the training. So what you just said how old the tribe was. So the date.
Well, this iteration of the tribe is 7 years since we formalized this tribe, and we brought on the members through a 5-week training, so everybody's on the same page, or an orientation, we called it. We just wanted to orient people to shared values, to different things that they agree to, and commitments. And
it's important to know that we stood in what we call sovereign energy. We chose to be the founders. We chose to be the champions, and then carefully picked people, and then brought them in as their sponsors, so to speak, and then trained them in communication skills and gender safety and intimacy and conflict resolution. And then they went into a provisional membership status for 3 to 6 months. And then they made the big commitment as full members. And we had let them know early on that at some point we would de-roll, which means we would formally step back from any leadership authority. So after about 1.5 years, I think there was 17 or 18 of us at that point. They knew that they were solid enough that they didn't need us in that role. So they had a big, splendid ceremony, and we got de-rolled. We stepped back from any leadership and became absolute peers with the rest of the group.
Yeah, we're looking for this viewpoint of what's coming for the future, which is that the new teacher is the Sangha. The new Buddha is the Sangha.
Thich Nhat Hanh said that.
So
the group.
We wanted that. We knew that was the kind of group we wanted. We did not want somebody power over people, but we needed to also hold the ground and tend the field until it was strong enough to move into this new direction.
For our viewers, what's your definition of Sangha?
Well, for me, Sangha is a community that is doing a practice together. Maybe it would be a practice of a spiritual practice, or a practice of presencing. And I think just by naturally what we do, we very much spend a lot of time presencing and being present and respectful, and practicing also being able to be reverent, have some sense of reverence as a shared value for the mystery of what is.
And I think what Thich Nhat Hanh was saying with that is that the time of the guru is over. And in the way we're imagining our tribes, our communities, is that there's no single leader. And we've been going for 7 years now. And in January, we just had that question, which I told you about everybody said how valuable tribe is for them. Yeah. And I haven't been bored. We have a different leader every week, and it's just been beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just remembering David Isaacs quoting the spell out gurus, G, you are you.
Yeah.
Forgotten who that. But what led up to this? There were some earlier iterations and
Definitely.
stages. Let's go back to when you first got together and realized this was going to be your life work together. And can you move the camera a little bit again? Zoe's disappearing off the side there. Good. So when did you know this was going to be your life work? At Burning Man? Together?
I don't know. I knew that there was going to be some familiarity. I knew this person. I remember I gently, as he got up to leave, suddenly just bam, he's ready to leave at 5 in the morning or something. And I just felt like I was wiping the marshmallow off his beard, and it's like, I know this person. Like, he's like, that's why I'm with a husband or something. So I had a sense of it. But I went to Malta with my girlfriends, took me to the goddess temples. We did a 3-week tour in Malta, in Gozo, and very transformational. And at one point, I was doing a breath work. And after the breath work, I had the vision of this Maltese goddess from ancient times saying, you have work to do with Bill Kauth. And I went, what? So that was November 1st, 2005. And I came back and I found his phone number from a friend and called him. And
there we were.
And we started to reconnect, but as friends, we both had done this training. And so we wanted to be, really give it some time to see whether, not rush into it. And so it took us quite some more time until Valentine's Day in February. Then we realized that we had something that was exceptional, and this work that we had to do around community.
But your question is really quite specific, as when did we know? And I can't remember a moment, but it's like we always kind of knew that this was our path together. This was our shared task, is to figure out how to do community in a way that actually works.
But now you took off from Burning Man, and she called you several months later after.
Yeah. But I knew the connection was there, so I kind of expected it. And I had another relationship I needed to end, so that was hard.
So you're busy doing your homework then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, precisely. No, it was very important to do that in a good way.
But when we did come together, I also had an experience. I kind of look for these. I have these moments. It's a different way of calculating things. But I was coming up to see Bill about the second time I came up to Ashland, and there's a place on the I-5 where you just get a view of Mount Shasta.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Right in your face. And this was a particularly perfect time where the lighting was stupendous. And I was listening to this music by a New Zealand singer named Peru. And it was just such a beautiful song of the time for community and the time for reaching out to people. And it just that plus hitting this mountain view. And I just had this kind of like a download of like, this is my work. This is our work together. That's when I really, really knew. I just, cause I had it in my body that I was to make this big move from Grass Valley, where I've been living for many years, to Ashland, because Bill was not interested in coming down there. And we started something with a friend of ours who was a Universal Life Church minister. And we worked together, the three of us, for a couple of years on building what we called Communitas. And that was very powerful for us to kind of deepen and refine our vision. But we found out we had different visions. Yeah. And so we had to be parted ways, which was painful, but we had very different outcomes. She wanted a place where everybody would come, and we wanted to find this place to refine and deepen committed friendship. Yeah. And that was a learning for us. And then we invited Diane Leaf Christian, who had met at Burning Man, who was editor of Communities magazine for 14 years. And we invited her to come out and give a seminar, a 3-day seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned a lot more from her about years of learning of what makes community work and what doesn't.
Yeah. Then we started another one we called Family of Choice, and we gave it away too soon. It's a really important detail. We gave it away too soon, and there was only 6 or 7 of us. And what happened is it rigidified and wouldn't grow. And I wanted something significantly bigger. So we basically moved on and recreated something different, which that family group all eventually came into fully. But that was one of the mistakes we made, is that, you know, I talked about how the sovereign, the founders have to hold that energy until the group is big enough and mature enough to let go. And that was the big learning from that particular experiment.
So then what, I remember that you had different stages of getting people together in different levels of intimacy. And how did that come about? And you say more about that.
Sure. That's a really important detail, which, as you know, Mankind Project has got 10,000 men that sit in group every week in 1,000 groups around the world. And that makes MKP, the Mankind Project, probably the first authentic fraternal group in 100 years. So it got me deeply interested in fraternal groups. So I started studying the old
Lodges.
The Elks and the Moose and the Odd Fellows and the Knights of Pythias. And there was millions of men in those groups. There was a point at like around 1900 where half of the American population was in a fraternal group. They were actually the safety nets. And when Social Security started coming in, they became kind of redundant. Their original function was gone. And they had a model which was, you can't get into one of those groups without a sponsor. You must be sponsored in. And then you go through a provisional membership time. And then when that's complete and everybody says go, then you make a really significant commitment with lots of ceremony. So that's the model that worked for millions and millions of our great-great-grandfathers. So we simply borrowed that model. So that's what we use now is to get into our tribe. You have to come in through a sponsor, go through a provisional membership time, and it's a bunch of training also. And I mentioned that, the communication skills and so forth. And then make a significant commitment to the tribe as a full member.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real old model, and by God, it works.
Yeah, and you're bringing it to the world now online, and I'm excited.
Yeah, yes.
I'm sending out emails to all of my friends. There was a piece, though, that I'm remembering prior to that where you got people together for a meeting where they would just exchange labor or
Or gift circles.
Oh, that was the gift circles. That was a nice model too.
You know, Chris, I think Charles Eisenstein came up. I mean, Bill learned about him very early on.
Yeah.
And Charles came and stayed with us, and he did a training out at a retreat center, Buckhorn Springs. And that was very pivotal.
Yeah.
Because he reoriented us to the idea of a flow of the gift. The flow of the gift, which is very indigenous. I mean, it's naturally indigenous, the flow of the gift. And so we started referring to our work as gift community. And sometimes we even did a piece with the people in our first family of choice, like, here's what I have to give to you. Here's what I have to give to you. And it was a very touching experience. So that orientation of looking at ourselves as the gift and stretching ourselves to receive gift, as well as to stretch ourselves to see ourselves as a gift, is what inspired us to do these gift circles that we would do monthly. And I think we had the longest going gift circle of anybody. And
for years.
we had like 6 years, we had gift circles here once a month, or they change. And it was a very rich experience where people would say, after a potluck, they would say, this is something I need. I need help with.
Yeah, we'd circle up, and each one in turn would say what they needed, and others would say, oh, I'd love to do that for you. I'd like to take care of your cat. I'd like to teach you that computer program, or you know,
Mhm.
whatever.
And the gifts ranged from fairly small asks, like I'd really like to learn how to sing better, to very big asks, like I need a new car, I need a van,
I need somebody to edit my book.
I need somebody to edit my book.
Yeah, one of the guys in the gift circle was actually a university professor, retired, and that was
English.
his thing. And he agreed to edit our book, and he did such a good job. That's the book called "We Need Each Other," which you know, that's a line from Charles Eisenstein. Anyway, we became I like this word, entangled,
Yeah.
and kind of in the tribe work, we like to imagine people getting entangled so they can't get untangled. So that guy is, I'm entangled with him forever, and I like it. I love having that debt to him that I'll never pay off.
So
But I keep trying.
yeah, people would astonish each other with the level of the magnitude of their gifts.
So you
And
did
then
a potluck as a part of the gift circle was the potluck then?
Oh yeah, and everybody brought stuff, and we'd stand
Yeah.
around and hold hands, and then everybody got to maybe we read a poem, and they do a like really brief check-in about the holiday or whatever, and then they would say what they brought. We
Yeah.
would ask everybody to say what they brought, and the more we did that, the more amazing, beautiful, homemade, specially cared for stuff started showing up. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Wow. And
So-
now, wasn't there then another level of a circle where people got more intimate and shared themselves? I've forgotten what you called that.
Trust circle.
Trust circle, yeah, that was it. Yeah, now, talk about that.
Well, a trust circle is a way in which it's very much based on the idea of Parker Palmer. I don't know if you know this Quaker Parker
Yeah,
Palmer, this work, and he has a standard that he presents with the trust circle, where he speaks about the soul as being shy. So it's like a wild animal, and to bring together the gift of each person.
Mhm.
There's a lot of silence in between. It's not like
Mm.
people check in around the room. You check in, you add your piece when you're ready to. And part of his design would be to give a sharing. The facilitator of the group would offer a third thing for everybody to relate to. It could be a poem, it could be a reading, it could be a piece of art or music.
Mhm.
And then people then would speak up about how they feel about that, how they reflect on that. And that is something that we bring forward in our trust circles, which we
Yeah.
present to people who are just starting the beginning steps
Yeah.
of connecting with people. So trust circles and friendship circles are edgy steps for a lot of people who are
Yeah.
been so
It's a
isolated,
real gentle way to begin the process.
or just in kind of casual chit chat groups, but this is a place where you can go deeper in a safe way
Mm-hmm.
and practice
is-
also some skills like active listening.
Is a friendship circle different or just a different name for the same thing?
Different name.
It's a different name for it.
Because these are the ways to find the people that you want for your tribe, you know, to,
Yes. Uh-huh.
to attract them to
Yeah.
your net.
Yes. And get to know people before you invite them into your tribe.
Exactly,
we teach
yeah.
a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you
Mhm.
see what we did, I look back and I go, wow, we did years and years of experiments and made mistakes and had successes
Mhm.
and reached out to a lot of people.
Yep.
And that is something that most people stop doing after, say, college.
Yeah.
So most
Yeah.
people haven't made any new friends since college, if they went to college. And we're
Yeah.
such an isolated society.
Yeah. We do actually a lot of that in the training because in teaching people how to reach out and make friends. It seems basic, but lots of folks don't know how to do that. So we actually teach them and encourage them. And we've got this follow-up group that we've been using that they help each other over the weeks and the months.
You know, it's interesting, Jack. We have this thing that we've offered in
Mm.
to our time for our online course, which is the value of play
Oh yeah.
and how people have forgotten to play with each other. They just don't play with each other
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
And it's such an important thing for breaking the ice and getting over ourselves. You know, this place where just doing a simple kind of theater game, if it's if it's non-threatening enough, almost everybody can do it. And it just allows this flow of warmth that takes people deeper than small talk.
Yeah.
We also take a deep look at small talk, at the art of small talk, because most people don't know how to really engage with people, and they get scared in a small talk situation or bored to tears, you know.
Yeah, so we play and sing and do all that kind of stuff in our tribe a lot, and we do not do any processing in the tribe. It's not the purpose of it. We simply are together as a bonding group for the joy of being together and feeling connected and safe and just loving each other. And from that comes so much healing. It's just amazing. And over the years, we watched people that were, you know, you could kind of tell there was some shadow going on, and you kind of watch over the years as how those shadows heal just from being, you know, attached, you know, having healed those wounds, and you know, feeling safe often for the first time at a certain level in their lives, and then they in that safety they come to know their own shadow, and they'll just go right after healing it, you know. So it's sort of fabulous to watch. So our model is not about, it's not therapeutic, it's not intended that way, and it's not about reaching out, it's not about, you know, being together to do any healing in the world. It's just for us. It's a bonding group.
But the effect of it is that people come into their mission even more fully, come into their work. And my gosh, the number of books that have been written by our group and the number of political campaigns that have been launched successfully, and so amazing creative things that we support each other in the good work in the world.
So do you have a Democratic presidential nominee out of your group?
We got a state senator.
We have a state senator now.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm just noticing a significant difference between our tribe and Novato that I want to explore with you. One of the problems that Yvonne and I, who started out as sovereigns, was that we couldn't find people that were willing to meet weekly or have a potluck. We started out that way, and many of them have grandkids, are so involved in other stuff, they just didn't have the time to do it. And it's been a struggle for me. Plus, Yvonne had started a women's group that was meeting weekly with the same women that we then drew their partners into the. So I've had this ongoing frustration of there's less commitment than I would like. However, my passion has been to find and create an environment where I can heal my own lack of skill in handling my shadow stuff. And the model for that is the clearing in I groups, which is the main reason I go to an I group, is to experience, you know, you go around the group and you see if you look at everyone's eyes, you see if there's something that's preventing you from being fully present. And you acknowledge that, and then you stand face to face with that man, and you own your projection onto him, which to me is the most difficult wellness activity there is. Yeah.
So we should point out that I Group stands for Integration Group. It's a Mankind Project thing. And Zoe and I are each in a separate gender group. She's in her women's group, I'm in my men's group. And in those groups, only one person is in the tribe. So it's a whole nother group of people. And that's where we do more of our personal work. And we don't do any of it in the tribe as such.
Well, I see it a little bit different.
But we also, just to speak to what you're talking about, we have that conflict transformation piece that we generated from the clearings and from NVC, which is quite a sophisticated way of handling conflict that actually pops open the transformation of people if they're really willing to do it with their hearts open, owning shadows, owning projections.
We've done quite a bit of that actually, but we take it offline.
Yeah, we don't do it in the group. If people have stuff with others in the tribe, they take it off, and they usually ask for somebody from the tribe to facilitate, to hold space for them to do that work with each other.
Interesting.
And we may have evolved that since you did the tribe training with us. I think that is something that we've changed.
You sent me some your handouts after that when we were up there for some other event last year. What was the? Oh, it was the Metadocs meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has been a key issue because in our group, we don't do a lot of processing, but we try to practice, for me anyway, and I'm usually the one that's the identified patient. I'm used to being that role because I'm the one that that pointed out that emperor's naked, and that's been my professional career in medicine,
I know you that way.
wellness, and I take a lot of flack for it. But
Sure.
ultimately, it leads to intimacy, and so we've had some fairly significant conflicts in the group. Outside that occurred outside of the group that were preventing the intimacy in the group.
Whoa.
And we've done some processing of that. We actually had Susan Campbell come in and do an evening for the whole community, and then she sat in with our group for after that and spent a couple hours with some of her practice routines for owning your projections and so forth. So we're still struggling with that, and I'm curious. I wasn't aware that you didn't do any processing in your group.
No.
We don't have any other vehicle for doing it at this point, so we have been, but it's evolving. And the big issue for me still is I'd like to meet more often. Plus the fact that I'm living here in Australia half the year, so I participate by FaceTime, which is working pretty well.
Is it?
It does, yeah. I can't do it the other way around with my Australian group because the time shift, but it works fine from here to the States because it's morning here when they meet in the evening there. And I've been, I don't take as active a role as I would were I there, but it's also an opportunity for them to step more into leadership and so forth. And Yvonne is there for part of the time. So it's still evolving, and I thank you both for the inspiration to do it. And I've counted 20-some groups that I've created or co-created since
over the years.
Over the years. I've lived in 5 intentional residential communities and 1 unintentional community where the guy that founded it had no clue about what was going to happen when you put a bunch of weird people together.
Yeah.
And so I wound up trying to sort stuff out. Plus, he would let some really weird people in without or bypassing our admissions procedure. Unfortunately, that got shut down by the council because he failed to get the right permits. So I've been enmeshed in this call to create community since I grew up in Bluffton, Ohio, and missed that. That plus, it's also the longing in my work in wellness of the currency of wellness is connection, and that most of us are disconnected from birth or before birth.
Yeah.
And so attachment parenting and the creating tribe for parents, like rent a granny is an idea I've had.
That's good.
So many nuclear families are struggling without the support. So this work is so important to me, and when we're all nodding our heads here.
It's important work.
Well, I feel like we've brought it to a head, and I'd like to see if there are any closing thoughts that you want to contribute to round it out. And
well, I do have one.
Yeah.
First, thank you, Jack, for this kind of leisurely way of kind of ambling through our lives and getting to know each other a little bit better. But this one thing has come to us after we've done this. We did this fall online training. Then we decided, okay, we're going to have a group support coaching calls going forward for these tribe builders and trust circle makers and friendship circles makers. And we've been surprised how successful the virtual tribing is. So here we are in the United States where gatherings are shutting down in a time when we need each other more than ever, all over. The public meeting places have closed. The Shakespeare Theater, you name it. So here, where isolation is being mandated right now, and people need connection more than ever before,
Mhm.
we're waking up to the fact that Zoom meetings, many tribes on Zoom meetings of people who can learn these skills on Zoom and are practicing them, and now we're creating their friendship circles, that we can create virtual tribes. It's something we never thought of before. And yet we found ourselves doing it with the ongoing coaching calls, but now it's really important.
Yeah, and it works pretty well, as you know, and you do Zoom a lot, and so do we. So we're incorporating that in because it's way better than nothing. And my final piece would be to suggest that, you know, anybody that's feeling a little call to build a tribe, do whatever it takes to build your community. And it's not easy. It's challenging, and take the challenge. It's so worth it. It's like somebody told me a long time ago, if you want old friends, you got to make new friends. So the same thing is true for community. It's do whatever it takes. And, you know, our book is available. Go to our website, timefortribe.com, and we'll send you a free copy. Or, you know, we do coaching, and just, so there's resources available for anybody that honestly, truly wants to create a personal community of you know, deep love and connection and support.
So how does the Zoom coaching work? Tell me about that.
How does the Zoom coaching look?
Are you talking coaching or groups?
The coaching?
Yeah, the coaching, it sounds like you're coaching people that are starting groups.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, we've got a, you know, kind of a simple fee structure, and we usually meet with people every 2 weeks, and then they've done their homework, they've reached out to people, and then we'll talk about the next step, and eventually they get enough people together, and we walk them through the actual training, you know, how to do communication skills, how to do the conflict piece, how to do the intimacy stuff. And then
well, that's the piece that we're promoting right now, right? That's the same one. Okay.
Well,
yeah,
we have an online course at 7 weeks, but that's separate from the coaching.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
How do
our
they
webinar is
interact?
on the 20th.
How do they interact?
We in breakout rooms, we put people through as many of the processes that we did in the tribe training as possible, and we model it, and then people are in the breakout rooms, and they have one-on-one exchanges with each other, and they just are. It doesn't seem like they're used to this level of intimacy.
Yeah, they're amazingly touched by
they're so touched by
doing these intimacy skills. Even in a Zoom call, they're so touched. It's impressive.
Yeah, in the breakout rooms.
So we're going to teach them how to do how to actually, you know, do a face-to-face tribe, but they can also use these same skills to create their own Zoom tribe.
So let me get this straight. The upcoming course is 7 weeks. And then in connection with that, for someone who wants to start their tribe, you offer a coaching program for them.
Yeah.
Yes. And we also have a follow-up group after the 7-week course.
We're starting to look, Jack, at this as more of a year-long program.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just because once people get the taste for it, they want more, and they want more assistance. And so we're here to encourage them. And then the other people that are also doing this, from North Carolina to Canada, they are coming up with really cool ideas about how they did it, and inspiring other people. So there's a beautiful cross-pollination going on as well.
Follow-up.
Community within community. Yeah.
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 Yep. Yes. They're building community as they're talking about how to build community.
Yeah. So we've always been, one thing I like about what I think we've done is that we look at what is the nature of our situation. Okay, we live in America, we live in our own homes. Hey, let's start there. Let's make an intentional community out of people living in their own homes, but are willing to commit to something like this. Okay, so we've worked really hard on that one, and it's been successful. And then now we're adapting to different times, because here in Oregon right now, people are not getting together face-to-face very much now. And so here, Zoom becomes increasingly important as a way to feed people who need the connection and are getting very little of it. So we're going to just flow and navigate with whatever the times deal us, whatever the cards deal us. We want to be resourceful and keep flexing.
So Bill's original thing of finding people you want to bury you that are a bicycle ride away are now a Zoom call away.
Yeah,
So,
so I mean,
I think both are happening.
yeah, both are happening. We're so encouraging, powerful, bonded, committed face to face. And one of the ways to learn how to do that in a good way is by Zoom. And like I say, Zoom calls are getting pretty intimate and they're so much better than nothing.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I'm so blessed to have met you both and to have learned so much from you. And I hope our viewers will similarly get this. And thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can chat a bit afterwards. So.
All right. Thank you, old friend.
Thank you, Jack.
Bye.